and welcome to another session on women's writing, which will continue with Olive Screener and her work. So soon many novels of this sort started emerging, and also we had several other novels which were based on physical oppression and also sexual exploitation. And this led the feminists to sympathize with the prostitutes. Now, Mrs. Gaskell, who is a British novelist during the Victorian era, her novels offer a detailed portrait of the lives of many strata of the society. And Neena is also an English novelist and a poet. They defended them and petitioned for them. That is, they defended many of the prostitutes. They defended their condition, especially the contagious disease campaign. They argued and petitioned for these women who were examined and looked upon as some sort of contagious or some sort of vectors, you can call them vectors. Whereas the men who are actually responsible for all this are not even examined, and they are let scot-free. So the Abolition Act questioned as to who was responsible. Was it the man or women? That is regarding the contagious disease campaign. So they devised plans, they made lectures, they conducted many meetings, and they also organized various societies like the Vegetarian Union, then anti-vivisection, anti-spitting, Association of the Psychic Society, Anti-Tobacco Society, the Anti-Narcotic League, Anti-Caged Bird Society. But the problem is, though they knew what they were against, they knew that they were against this patriarchal evils of this patriarchy, evils of what is happening to the women, how women are looked down upon, and they wanted to change, but they did not have a clear idea. That was the problem faced during this phase of New Woman. Therefore, these writers of this period, like Olive Screener, Sarah Grant, Mrs. Craig, Beatrice Haddon, Mary Coleridge, and George Egerton, and many more, they haven't fared well, or their books haven't fared well, because they were not able to keep the fire burning. They knew what they were against, but they couldn't actually inspire or influence completely. Now, most of these feminist writers were in fact stressed out. That is also another problem. They were stressed out due to their responsibilities as feminists, and most of them suffered from mental breakdown. So in this generation, that is female, this particular generation that we are speaking about or we are talking about, female suicides became more and more. And these women writers found it difficult to write more than one book. They could just manage to write hardly manage to write one book. And suicides, because these women could not cope up with the pressure that they had undertaken. Also, things were getting more difficult to women as such. It's not about the feminist, it's about women as such, the whole women society as such. Things were getting very much difficult, and they were on the verge of losing themselves. Then you have Eleanor Max, Charlotte Mew, Adela Nicholson. They all suffered from one problem or the other. Like you have Eleanor Marx, she ended her life at 43. She was the youngest daughter of Karl Marx. Her marriage was a failed one. Charlotte Mew and Adela Nicholson, or Adela Nicholson, her nickname was Hope, and even then, it's very ironical. Her nickname was, her pen name was Hope, but she suicides. She took her own life. Both Charlotte Mew as well as Adela Nicholson. And Amy Levy, she suffered from depression as well as deafness. So if you look at the works of all these people, or if you look at their personal life also, you will find that they were going through a trauma. This period itself, they were trying to change something. They were trying to change the whole idea of woman, and how they wanted to be looked at, but they were not able to reach their goal. They did not know how to do it. They did not have a clear idea. They knew what they were against. They knew just that they were against this evil patriarchal society. They were against the attitudes of men, and how women are suppressed and oppressed by them. They knew what they were against, but they did not have a clear idea of how they wanted to change the society. Okay. Now, if you coming back to Olive Schreiner's work, you will find confused aspirations and dreams, and you will also find claustrophobia and femaleness of the feminist aesthetic embodied here. And she was a free thinker. Olive Schreiner was a free thinker. So Olive Schreiner, if you look at her life, it is very ironic. She was a free thinker, and she was born to Calvinist parents. She was a woman who could never finish a book. She was a feminist who hated being a woman. She was a maternal spirit who never knew or who never became a mother. So everything about Olive Schreiner was a paradox. ഒരു ചാഞ്ചല്യമുള്ള, ഒരു പരസ്പര വിരുദ്ധമായ വൈകാരിക നിലപാടുകളുള്ള ഒരു മനസ്സായിരുന്നു അവരുടേത്. നിറഞ്ഞ ഒരു മനസ്സായിരുന്നു അവരുടേത്. So Sheila Robotham describes Schreiner's feminism as a mystical connection to other women with whom she could communicate only through the common experience of pain. Such a connection was best sustained when the other women were far away. So that's a strange fact. Schreiner could never enjoy the company of women. Schreiner wrote about women, wrote about their pain. She can only communicate through the common experience of pain, but she could not withstand being with women and listening to them for long. She did not like the idea of getting to their intense problems. For instance, she had a compassion for the black race, that is the Kafirs. She had compassion for the London prostitutes, the mill girls. But she could not tolerate the pressure of daily exposure to their problems. She had a very sensitive soul. There are even times when she felt suffocated by female flesh on, including her own. But despite all this, her novels portrayed the helpless, tortured women. So she hated being a woman as such. Certain times she felt suffocated by this very own female nature. So she was a feminist who hated being a woman. So, but if you look at her writings are totally different. Her book, her novels are different. Whereas what she was in real life, getting too close to women, understanding their problem, was something that annoyed her, frustrated her, because she could not bear to listen to several problems, or she felt choked and suffocated when she was confronted with the hardcore reality that women faced, especially the London prostitutes and the the women who faced brutality in the hands of men. Those exposure, or that she could not bear, or she could not tolerate the pressure of such daily exposure to their problems. But her book, on the other hand, portrayed helpless and tortured women. Her book, story of an African farm and woman and labor, all these portray how women are tortured and their helpless situation. So from all this, one can conclude that no man will volunteer to wear the ring of womanhood, or bear children and know the pain. So mostly these two novels, if you look at these two novels, Story of African Farm and Woman and Labor, the gist of it is that no man will volunteer to wear the ring of womanhood and bear children and know their pain. So it is difficult being a woman. I want you to try and read these novels. You can just Google search at least and go through Wikipedia and read the summary of it, so that you can get you will get an understanding of what we are discussing in the lecture. Now, women in Screener's stories are monsters. They are swollen, they are destructive, they are not good looking. They are parasites. In her book Woman and Labor, they are parasites. All right. So she tries to bring out the condition of woman as women in revenge, seeking extreme freedom like men. They are monstrous, they are obese, they are not beautiful, they are taken as objects of pleasure. So she, however, she was not a very productive or self-disciplined writer. See, the main concept of what we are discussing here, this is a history of feminist novelists and how they persuaded women, or how they influenced women, or how they helped women gain their freedom. So that's what we are looking at. So here, when you look at Olive Screener was not able to influence greatly. Her books portrayed the sufferings, and it was not about all beautiful women. It was all about more real kind of women who were fat and not beautiful, and you see a kind of revenge-seeking kind of nature in all these women. However, so that was why or that was a need for women writers. Women writers were essential to influence these people, or this women as such, the other sisters or the other women as such, and bring them or free them from this chains of patriarchy. But since she was not a very productive and self-disciplined writer, she couldn't do much in bringing out a change in the society. Her manuscripts, however, disappeared mysteriously, and most of them were discarded. They were waxed and waned over the years. She also developed this writer's block. She couldn't write for some time. She was even asked to undertake the introduction to a new edition of Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Women, but this too proved impossible. She couldn't write. So as a writer, she lacked a lot of things. Writing for her was a semi-ecstatic trance state in which the unconscious revealed itself. So she had to be moved by this feeling, only then she could write. She also feared, another reason why she did not write much was her fear for criticism. She has expressed this fear in one of her letters, and she speaks about the artists and their natural reluctance to face criticism, which is transmuted into a morbid female fear and self-exposure and rejection. So here, though it is a general thing, she's speaking about artists and their natural reluctance to face criticism, she links this morbid fear to that of female fear. So from that we understand that she also feared from criticism. She had a natural tendency to be scared of criticism. So this natural reluctance is linked to that of female fear. Okay, she herself speaks about it as a female fear, natural artist's reluctance to face criticism. So from this we can understand that she was scared of criticism, and this was revealed in some of her letters. Yet Skriner made an important contribution to female tradition. Her use of female symbolism, her commitment to feminist theory, and her physical allegories, which were read in the Holloway prison, were a part of her effort to articulate the tenets of indirect perception of a new womanhood. She greatly influenced other women like Virginia Woolf, Dorothy Richardson, Doris Lessing, but her male contemporaries failed to understand this quality in her book. They never bothered to see the great contribution she made to the tradition of female writers. Though she was not greatly, or she was not able to influence many and bring them out of, or she was not able to reshape the society, she was able to, or her contribution was important because she was able to influence many other great writers like Virginia Woolf, Dorothy Richardson, Doris Lessing and all. And she did make a great contribution to the tradition of female writers. The male contemporaries, her male contemporaries, however, couldn't understand her female symbolism. They attacked her and her novels for being silly. They said that her novels were about people who lacked religion, or about people who tackled religious problems, who fell in love, or she chose subjects or such topics over masculine ones like shooting a deer, finding diamonds and great things. When her male contemporaries were writing about all such masculine things, she was writing about silly, petty things. But that was because they could not understand the symbols in her that were used in her book. It was not about it, they were not silly problems, they were not tackling religious problems. They were all symbols fighting against this evil patriarchy, symbols portraying to the world the troubled state a woman is in. African Farm is about a man's moral redemption in a meaningless universe, and he identifies it with the female sufferings. Waldo in African Farm falls for Lindall, a childhood friend, and many are reminded, or this reminds us of the Wuthering Heights. Skriner's Lindall is the first serious feminist heroine in the English novel, and she remains one of the few who is not patronized by her author. She has a voice of her own. Through Lindahl, Skinner analyzes the sex role conditioning, narcissism, parasitism, and frustration. Victorian heroines became Skinner's powerful sources. Maggie Tulliver on Mill on the Floors, that is George Eliot, and Dorothea in Middlemarch by George Eliot, were a great influence on her. So from 1875 until her death, Skinner wrote and rewrote a long novel which was posthumously published in 1926, and the novel was From Man to Man. And she did not have any idea of how it would turn out. The book is different, and it is very odd and very melodramatic. And it has a very remarkable feature. The remarkable feature is that of female psyche. It's all about the female mind. And the book is dedicated to her little sister Ellie, who died when as a baby, 18 months or so, and when Skinner was only 9 years old, and also to her own daughter. She had a child. She did give birth to a child, but the child, however, died soon. The child was born on 30th of April, and she died on the 1st of May. So 30th April and 1st of May, not hardly month, just few days, that's it. The child only lived for few days, and so that is why, that in that sense I said she never knew what it meant to be a mother. She never had children after that. So she dedicated this book, From Man to Man, to her sister, who died at the age of, who was just 18 months, a baby when she died, and to her child who lived, to her own daughter who lived hardly for 2 or 3 days. And the story, the central character of Man to Man, are two sisters again, Rebecca and baby Bertie. And Bertie is seduced by her tutor, and and people start gossiping about her and what has been going on with her tutor, and fearing this bad remark, Bertie had to leave South Africa and go to England, and thereby she falls to the world, or she sinks into a life of sin. Rebecca, on the other hand, is married and she has children, but she becomes, she is dependent on her husband, and she feels sad, she's lost, and ultimately she discovers that her husband is unfaithful to her. She gets separated from him, and the whole book is about how she raises her children. And there are many symbols. That's what I said, her symbols were not understood by her male contemporaries. Now in this, she finds her sister in a Cape Town brothel. Brothel is a prostitution place where prostitutes live, and she finds her sister in a syphilitic condition. She has syphilis, that sexually transmitted disease, because Bertie has fallen into the life of sin. She has become a prostitute. When she ran away to England, she was forced to take up the job as a prostitute. She was forced to be a prostitute, and she now suffers from syphilis. So again, see how it is connected with the Contagious Disease Act. So she is in her deathbed, Bertie is in her deathbed, and Rebecca tenderly nurses her sister. And the difference between Rebecca and Bertie is that Rebecca is particularly a very convincing portrait of women who is not so much trapped as self-imprisoned. So you find traces of Olive Screener in these two characters. Now, Screener has great affinities or similarities with Virginia Woolf, and Man to Man also, if you look at the language as well as a symbol used by Screener, you will find similar symbols and similar language in A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Now, the greatest symbol or the most potent and disturbing symbol in this book, Man to Man by Olive Screener, is where Rebecca makes a little place for herself in a corner of the children's room. You will also recall similar instances in can also find similar instances in Mrs. Gaskell's accounts of the broths circling the drawing room table, and also in Charlotte Perkins Gilman's novel, The Yellow Wallpaper, which is actually a horror story. It is about a woman who goes mad during her rest cure, and these confined women adopt compulsive behavior of caged animals. Okay, so Rebecca, she has to make do with this small little room that she has arranged very much next to her children's room. She has just separated her children's room with a small separation. That is, the room was one small one made out of cutting off the end of the children's bedroom with a partition. She had it for herself as a study room, and also a place where she could hear her children call if they needed her at night. She could it was hardly larger than a closet in the sense the cupboard, but here there was a window in it and a small outer door, and both there was a window in it, and both looked out onto the rockery and the hedge, and nothing else. And there was a small door closed behind the window, which she had put in that at any time she might run out and work a little in the garden. So all this narration itself shows or tells you, it stands as a symbol for her troubled life, for her the trouble that a woman goes through when she's separated from her husband, and how she has to bring up her children, and the problems that she faces, the loneliness, how she confronts her loneliness and the parting and all the other troubles and that a woman has to undergo. So I would like you to just read the Wikipedia or summary of Man to Man, so that you will get an idea of Olive Screener's book, and also focus on the symbols that are used in it. So if you look at Screener's Man to Man, it has a lot of affinities with Virginia Woolf and her Room of One's Own. Now, in Olive Screener's Man to Man, Rebecca has a private room, and this is the most potent and disturbing symbol of all. Rebecca makes a small place for herself in the corner of the children's room. She does not allow her husband to enter that room. It's not because it contains anything valuable. It is because it is a place of her fantasies and her imagination. It is where she becomes what she is. She imagines what it must be like to be one of a company of men and women in a room together, all sharing somewhat the same outlook on life. In her fantasy, that is. So again you find this symbol of what? Symbol of man and woman as having the same equal power. And though her works, she works out a feminist philosophy that derives life, growth and evolution from mother to love, she cannot help wishing to be a man. So there is this second wave, the feminist feeling, their rebellious nature and their wish to become like man, that is portrayed here. So this also one can recall other works like Mrs. Gaskell's work and also Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, which is actually a horror story of a woman going mad during her rest cure. And these women, these confined women, these caged or confined women, they adopt compulsive behaviors of caged animals. So all this bring out the features of women and their sufferings during this period. And this is very much explicit in the novels of Olive Skriner. As I told you, Skriner's novels were not very much influential. From someone so keenly aware of female oppression, Skriner is sadly under ambition. When all is said and done, the novels are depressing and claustrophobic. The heroines are granted only the narrowest of possibilities. The treatment of them is disconcertingly unadventurous and even timid. Lindal dies after childbirth. Bertie meets a fate worse than death. Rebecca retreats, daydreams, and cultivates a fragmented and undisciplined life. So we'll stop here. Thank you and keep safe.